Hey, brothers and sisters, thanks for joining me. Well, it's another day and Trump is at it again, and liberals are losing their mind as usual. So, what is it this time? So, I found this story from Washington 4. Try to be balanced here and get different perspectives. So, the story is this is not about crime. DC reacts to Trump's takeover of police. All right, so it's definitely a left-leaning headline. Fair enough. It is a NBC in Washington. I would expect the reporters to be on the left, but okay. But before I'm too biased here, let's get into it and let's see what this article has to say. I haven't actually read it yet. Some expressed anger over the federal takeover of DC police. Others say they're fed up with the crime in the city and in favor of Trump's announcement. Okay, I think that's a fair kind of secondary headline. And in case somebody didn't know, Trump yesterday signed an executive order taking over the police in Washington, D.C., and that's completely legal. He has the authority to do it under the current law that governs Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is not a normal state. Instead of the municipal government reporting up to a state government, they really report up to Congress in Washington. But Congress has delegated a lot of their power over the district to the mayor's office and other local politicians, but not all of it. And the president does also have some powers in Washington, so it's a mix. So Trump, and really this is all because a member of Doge got really beat badly by a group of Utes, about 10 of them allegedly, and it was Big Balls, who was a member of the Doge team that worked for Elon Musk. So it's somebody Trump has probably met, and seeing the pictures of him beat up just, I think annoyed Trump, and he said, that's it, I'm going to fix crime now in DC because the local government doesn't seem to be able to do it. So he basically federalized the police. I don't know if that's the right term, but he took over the police. He sent in, I want to say it was about 800 National Guard, and he also called federal law enforcement out in force to start patrolling the streets. He did that over the weekend. And he has said if he needs to, he will go ahead and call in the National Guard. Now, I'm not going to watch this video. This video is going to be, mostly about Trump's press conference where he announced that. Plus, there will be, I'm sure, activists on both sides, most likely, but probably most of them will be anti-Trump because anti-Trump people seem to do a lot of protesting. But anyway, so let's read this story. So I think, the top end headline, I wasn't in journalism, is a little bit liberal. The bottom one I think is kind of balanced though, so which is good. All right, so by Amy Cho, News 4 reporter, and Gina Cook, and this came out on the 11th, which was yesterday. Today's the 12th. So Washington D.C. residents are speaking out, both for and against President Donald Trump's move to federalize the city's police department. Okay, so I guess it is being called federalized, and activate 800 National Guard soldiers. Oh, yeah, so it looks like I got that right. Trump said during a Monday news conference he was invoking Section 740 of the 1973 District of Columbia Home Rule Act to federalize Metropolitan Police Department. Yeah, before that, since at least the Civil War, Washington, D.C. was run by 3 commissioners appointed by the president, but in 1973, Richard Nixon signed into law a Home Rule Act allowing, a mayor to be elected and a more kind of normal city government to take power that could be elected by the citizens of the district, more like a regular U.S. city, but Washington D.C. is not a regular city, so don't think it is. The rules for Washington D.C. are different from anywhere else in the country. So that's one thing. A lot of the things people are going to say that Trump is going to do based on Washington D.C., he won't actually be able to do most of these things in a normal city, not without the governor or the Congress in a particular state's approval. All right, so he cited crime as the reason for the takeover. But MPD statistics show 26% drop in violent crimes this year so far compared to last year. Now, I did a story yesterday about that. It's been alleged that police leadership had been cooking the books on violent crime in DC to make statistics look lower, at least for the last 2 years. So check out my previous video if you're interested in that. There is a police commander who has been suspended from the force currently, who's under investigation for fudging the violent crime numbers, and the police union has said that this is happening, that leadership is doing it, but the investigation is ongoing. It's not proven yet. So any numbers that they're touting are suspect, and I would say just look for yourself. They may be getting better, but they're still bad. And anecdotal evidence, at least 2 reporters that are in the White House press pool have recently said that they were personally mugged or carjacked or something like that. At least 2 have publicly said that. And so, I'm sorry, crime is out of control. And then in the last couple of years, several government officials have been mugged, carjacked, even killed. Officials and I think even elected officials have been impacted by some of this. So, no, anyone who says crime is fine in D.C., I don't know what you're smoking, but go back and smoke it, and let the adults, kind of go back and run things. We are going to be here, and we're not backing down, one community activist said at a rally. Know that safety in the community is inseparable from its sense of belonging and justice, not its fear of somebody's uniform. Let us choose a future where safety is earned, not enforced by intimidation. Many of the demonstrators wore black T-shirts with the words "Free DC" in white below the emblem of the DC flag. They held up signs saying "Time to resist" and "Free DC, release the Epstein files." Well, I agree with the release Epstein files part, but I believe DC is actually free. But part of the problem is here. It is true most of the residents of DC did not vote for Donald Trump. It was something like Trump got 7% of the vote in the district in the popular vote. It doesn't really count in the electoral college, but it's symbolic is all. But he did get 7 to Harris getting something like 93, and so it's a very strongly Democratic area, and it's not a big place. I think it's something like 10 miles by 10 miles square. So it's relatively a small area, but it's very, very heavily leans Democrat in the vote. So, of course, they're against anything Trump would want to do, even if it would lower crime in their own city. Around the world, we have seen the rise in authoritarianism. Now we are seeing it here. And what we know from history is that authoritarians always want to control the capital and the people in the capital city. It's because it's the fastest way to silence dissent and to accelerate their agenda, an activist told the crowd. And I want to be clear, this is not about crime. This is about Trump is trying to do to DC in order to take over to DC and silence us. I completely disagree. They got to forget that this isn't about authoritarianism. Trump won more than 50% of the vote. More people voted for Trump than against Trump in this last election, but the way the activists make it sound, that wouldn't be the case. So he does have the majority of votes, and as Obama said, elections have consequences. But not all DC residents are against the move to federalize the police force. I'm happy Trump is going to have his department take over the police department. I think it's needed. I think we'll have some results, said Leroy Thorpe, who founded Citizen Organized Patrol Efforts, a group that patrols the streets of Chinatown doing violence prevention work. Yeah, so citizens are going out and having to do the work because the police are just not doing a good job. With the mayor being in power so long, I think she's kind of used to how things are going, and I think Donald Trump really wants to clean it up, and I'm all for it, another group member, Jesse McKnight, said. And I don't know how long the mayor's been in, maybe it'll say, but I believe this is the mayor here. I don't live in Washington, D.C., so I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe that is the mayor. I'm not going to listen to her. I'm not going to play her clip, but I will put in the notes this whole story so you can go listen to it, because she may be saying something completely different. Well, maybe I will listen to it. All right, so these kids are out of hand. They've been out of hand. Something has to be done. Too many people are dying out here. Too many innocent people cope volunteer Cheryl Watson said. And let's see. What it says here, the mayor is responding. So let's listen to the mayor. I'll go ahead and play it.
So let me start by saying this. Washington, D.C. is a beautiful city, magnificent city. We're home to 700,000 Washingtonians. We welcome millions of visitors every year from around our nation and around the world. We have the nation's premier park system, fantastic public schools, including a free and robust pre-K program starting at age 3. We have a tremendous public transportation system, and we have hardworking people here who are raising families, starting businesses, and hiring workers. So it's very important to me that for all who live here and visit here, just know how beautiful our city is and how proud we are of all that we've accomplished here.
Yeah, that was a good opening. I'm probably not going to listen to the whole thing, but let's listen to a little bit more and see what she has to say.
We're unique in other ways as well. Though we pay taxes, in fact, we pay more than most states per capita. We're not a state. We don't control the DC National Guard. We don't have senators or full autonomy. Limited home rule gives the federal government the ability to intrude on our autonomy in many ways. I've said before, and I'll repeat, that I believe that the president's view of D.C. is shaped by his COVID era experience during his first term. And it is true that those were more challenging times related to some issues. It is also true that we experienced a crime spike post-COVID, but we worked quickly to put laws in place and tactics that got violent offenders off our streets and gave our police officers more tools, which is why we have seen a huge decrease in crime because of those efforts. We have been able to reverse that 2023 crime spike. This year, crime isn't just down from 2023, it's also down from 2019, before the pandemic, and we're at a 30-year violent crime low. We're not satisfied. We haven't taken our foot off the gas, and we continue to look for ways to make our city safer. We know, however, as most have heard from the president's press conference, that he has prerogatives in D.C. unlike anywhere else in the country, including his authority given by our home rule charter to require the mayor, to require me, to supply services of the Metropolitan Police Department. And he also has control and the ability to deploy the National Guard. But let me be clear, as our home rule charter is also clear, and the president's executive order restates. Chief Pamela Smith is the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, and its 3,100 members work under her direction. The Home Rule Charter requires the mayor to provide the services of MPD during special conditions of an emergency, and we will follow the law. Though there's a question about the subjectivity of that declaration. In fact, the chief has already provided a high-level liaison and point of contact with the federal government and made those initial contacts. The executive order is also clear that the president has delegated his authority to make requests of us to Attorney General Pam Bondi. I have reached out to Attorney General Bondi and hope to schedule a meeting soon. My message to residents is this. We know that access to our democracy is tenuous. That is why you have heard me and many Washingtonians before me advocate for full statehood for the District of Columbia. We are American citizens. Our families go to war. We pay taxes and we uphold the responsibilities of citizenship. And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised. I can say to DC residents that we will continue to operate our government in a way that makes you proud. We will balance our budgets. We will deploy our services. Our kids are going to start school on August 25th. And we will work with the federal government to do the things that they should do for our city, including making sure that we have the judges that we need, including making sure that all federal parks are supported, not just with law enforcement, but with other clean and safe activities, and including making sure that our economy is supported by rational federal actions as it relates to the federal workforce, federal workers, and federal property in the District of Columbia. So with that, I want to ask Chief Smith to talk about her interactions with the federal forces, federal police and law enforcement that have been engaged in the district over the last several days, and the strategy that she thinks would be important while we have additional federal police officers.
All right, so yeah, in all fairness, I decided I'd go ahead and let the mayor talk, and she gives a really good speech. She's well put together, and I think she's pretty hard hitting on her speech. But the big but for me is that I think she's incompetent. I do think they need a new mayor there. They need new leadership. The city is not well run. It's dirty. It's got all this crime. And even though she says crime is down, like I said before, there's allegations that they've been cooking the books. And I think she tried to make it sound like Trump was at fault a little bit, or he was viewing the city through the lens of crime around COVID time. That was almost all Biden. Trump was only in for a few months when COVID happened, and and then Biden took over. So I think they like us to forget that and kind of muddy the waters with what happened on Biden's watch and what happened on Trump's watch. This massive increase in crime happened on Biden's watch during her mayorship, and then, so I've also done another video where I also think that the police chief is completely incompetent. And again, if you just look at the crime, it is out of hand, no matter what they say. And even the police union has come out and said that we support Trump taking over because crime is out of hand in the city. And there's a funny video that I did earlier because the police chief could not answer the question of what the chain of command was, and she had to the mayor had to jump in and answer that for her. I'm sorry, the woman just looked like she's out of her depth. She's a DEI hire for sure, the police chief. The mayor, no, I think the mayor is a savvy politician. I just think it's time for her to go, and they need a new mayor. So let's go ahead. What do we got? We got about 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes left, 3 minutes, something like that. We'll go ahead and watch the rest. And let's to be fair, let's let the police chief talk, and you guys make your own opinion. But I haven't seen this, but I've already made mine up about her.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Pamela Smith, the Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department. And as the Mayor stated, we have a responsibility to support the executive order. And one of the roles that I have is to ensure that we work very collaboratively with our federal partners. I know that most of us know in this room, and those of you that are watching on television, that the efforts of the federal law enforcement officers began in our city on Thursday night. I met with the director of the U.S. Marshal, who has been at that point overseeing the operational component of how the federal resources will be allocated and deployed around our city. With that conversation, it was very, very important for me to ensure that not only do we work collaboratively with our federal partners, but we offer up areas across our city where we can work with them in areas where we know that we want to reduce crime. And so that was the effort on yesterday. We spent roughly about an hour just kind of planning and talking through what that's going to look like. On the heels of the announcement from the president today regarding the executive order and my directive from the mayor is that we will begin more intense planning efforts after I leave this press conference. I've also met with one of the other liaisons that have been assigned to work with the U.S. Marshal, along with myself, regarding the efforts around the city for how we will allocate resources. What I will say is this: our relationship with our federal partners is not new. We do this on a daily basis. We are very, very, very much in tune to having federal law enforcement officers working with us on our Capital Area Regional Task Force. Our federal partners work with us, especially on some of our warrant executions. They work very, very closely with us with our Violent Crime Suppression Division, and it is my intent and my police department's intent to continue those efforts. What you will see is an enhanced presence. The second thing that's really important to me, and I'm speaking directly to our community, is that we have a relationship with our community that is very important to us, our community members. And so having our Metropolitan Police Department working alongside of our federal partners who have come into the city to really help us assess and deal with the crime, that some of the crime spikes that we have, we will work alongside them. But intentionally, we want to make sure that our community understands that we are there. We're going to be boots on the ground. If you see something, again, say something. We value those relationships. Our community members, and I want to say thank you for all the work that you've done with the Metropolitan Police Department up to this point. Those relationships are very, very important to us, and we want to continue to build upon that and continue to enhance that.
All right, so now you've seen it. This time, I think the police chief sounded very competent. She was better prepared for this press conference. And to be fair with the police, a lot of times I feel bad for the police because their hands are tied, because the politicians are who they really work for. And so the mayor is her real boss, I'm thinking, probably, and telling her what to do. And the city councilor's telling her what to do. And the local prosecutors are telling her what to do. And these are all elected officials that are basically soft on crime. And this is why I've seen many stories about teens are running amok in the city, because they know if they're less than 18, they can do anything they want and nobody's going to do anything to them. And so they're just running amok. And that's one of the things Trump's trying to stop. But again, she was better this time than the last interview. Like I said, last time she didn't even know what the chain of command was. She looked like she just was not prepared. This time was better, but still, I think she needs to go. I think her and the mayor both need to go. They need fresh leadership. And definitely, I'm thinking the police chief is a DEI hire. And what I mean by that is I'm completely against that. I'm only for hiring for merit. I don't care what a person's race is. I don't care where they come from. I don't care what their accent looks like. I don't care what their color is. What's their experience and credentials for doing the job? That's what I want to see. Hire the person who is best for the job, not to meet some identity quota. That's just nonsense. That's how we get into these situations. We have people doing a lot of these jobs that are out of their depth. All right, so let's move on. DC leaders react to Trump to federalizing police. For DC residents, access to democracy is tenuous. Mayor Muriel Bowser said at a news conference Monday afternoon, so we just watched that. District residents fight in wars, pay taxes. I agree with all that, but I don't think that they should be a state because DC is really small, and that's just how it is. The Constitution says it's a federal district. If you want to live in a state, go live in Virginia. If you want to live in a state, go live in Maryland. There's lots of places nearby that you can commute into DC. DC is only 10 miles square. DC should not be a state. And if you don't like it, don't live there. Is kind of my view on it. The DC Council criticized the takeover of the police department, saying there's no federal emergency. if Trump says there's a federal emergency, then there is. You don't get to tell Trump when and where there's an emergency. The president just gets to decide it's an emergency. This is a manufactured intrusion into local authority, council members said in a statement. I completely disagree. Soft on crime policies got us here, and Trump's not having it anymore. Further, the National Guard has no public safety training or knowledge of local laws. The Guard's role does not include investigating or solving crimes in the district. Calling out the National Guard is an unnecessary deployment with no real mission, the statement read in part. And part of that is true. The Guard's main focus is not law enforcement, so they don't do investigations, but they are empowered to enforce local law at the direction of law enforcement officers. They are not bound by the Posse Comitatus Act, which stops the U.S. Active duty military, like the Marines, the Army, the Air Force, from enforcing civilian law. But National Guard and Coast Guard are legally allowed to enforce those laws. And that law, I actually think the Posse Comitatus Act would be ruled unconstitutional if a president ever fought it. It really came about because the Grant sent federal troops to enforce the law in the South after the Civil War, and then Southerners just didn't like it. And so once Southerners got back into Congress, they made a law banning the federal government from doing that. That's how it came down. My dad always talks about it because he was in the Air Force and in the security forces. He had to learn all the time about the Posse Comitatus Act and what he was allowed to do and what he wasn't allowed to do. It was always on the promotion test, he said. But anyway. He doesn't need the consent of anybody. He's allowed to call out the National Guard for whatever he wants to. In that respect, he's like the governor of a state, just as Congress is like the state government when it comes to Washington, D.C. He can call them out whenever he wants. It doesn't matter what the city council has to say. D.C. Police Union has said it supports Trump's action. Yep. So if the union is supporting Trump, then there's got to be a crime or a leadership problem. It's a fact. So the union agrees that crime is spiraling out of control and the immediate action is necessary to restore public safety. However, we emphasize that federal intervention must be a temporary measure with the ultimate goal of empowering a fully staffed and supported MPD to protect our city effectively. The union called on Congress and the White House to repeal the misguided crime laws the council has just passed in recent years. Yeah, so like I said, the city council in Washington, D.C., they've got too many soft on crime liberal policies that are hampering the police's ability to do the job. And Congress could revoke those laws if they wanted to. Now, Congress could also just fire the mayor if Congress wanted to and set up a different form of government within Washington, D.C. if Congress wanted to, but that won't happen because they would need Senate approval, and Trump's majorities or the Republican majorities are too thin. Democrats are never going to vote with Trump on this kind of action, so that won't happen. But it will have to be temporary unless the law gets changed by Congress. So the temporary federal takeover is a necessary step to stabilize the situation, but is not a long-term solution. The real path forward lies in addressing root causes of the MPD's challenges, particularly the need for adequate staffing and reversal of harmful legislation. I think the legislation is the big part, and then also they need a change of leadership to get tough on crime. I think that's what it's going to take to fix this. Trump was kind of joking around about it yesterday that they told Trump they needed more police. And he asked them how many they had. They told him he's got 3,500 police there, and Trump was just aghast. Like 3,500, that's a lot of police, and they need more. It's because they're not being efficiently used. That is more, I believe, than they just need more. D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab called the administration's actions unprecedented, unnecessary, and unlawful. So that's just political posturing. It's not unprecedented. Things like this have happened in the past. Unnecessary? No, I think it probably is necessary. That's debatable. And it's definitely not unlawful. And if it's unlawful, the courts will rule it so. The courts are there to call the balls and strikes. And I'm sure people will try to run to the courts and stop this because they do everything Trump does. But I expect, and he may get some rulings against him because the D.C. court is notoriously liberal. But I think once it gets up to an appeals level or the Supreme Court, I think everything here is completely legal. No matter what the lunatics will say, it's legal. We are considering all our options and will do what is necessary to protect the rights and safety of district residents, Schwab said in a post on X. Longtime D.C. statehood champion Del Eleanor Holmes Norton called Trump's actions counterproductive, potentially dangerous, and egregious assault on D.C.'s home rule. President Trump's decision to federalize MPD and activate the National Guard to address crime is an historic assault on D.C. home rule, is a counterproductive, escalatory seizure of D.C.'s resources to use for purposes not supported by D.C. residents, and is more evidence of the urgent need to pass a D.C. statehood bill, she said in part in a statement. Holmes Norton and Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat from Maryland, said they'll reintroduce legislation in September to grant D.C. full control over D.C. National Guard and police. Also, won't happen. It's a Republican Congress. All right, so I think we've said enough here. Like I said, I think it's about time. I'm happy Trump has done what he's done. The problems here are because of poor leadership by elected officials in D.C. and I also believe incompetent leadership within the police force itself. We need to get rid of all the DEI hires and put in people that actually know how to do the job and know what a chain of command is. I think that would be helpful. People saying this is an overreach, I disagree. Everything here is completely legal and temporary unless Congress changes the law, which I wish they would do, but I honestly don't expect them to change the law. So it's about time. I don't like D.C. being the fourth largest violent crime or homicide city in the U.S. I saw a statistic like that earlier, and Trump pulled out a chart where it is by far the highest homicide rate of any nation's capital. It's even ahead of like Bogota, Colombia, or Baghdad when it comes to homicide rates. So yes, I applaud Trump. I'm sorry it had to come to this, but liberals, you need to clean up your cities, clean up your act, and then people like Trump wouldn't be coming in and doing this. Thanks, everyone. Hope you liked it. Please like and subscribe if you did. If you don't, hey, don't watch me. Tell me in the comments what I got wrong or right. Thanks. Bye.